Hello everyone, welcome. Hey. Shh. Welcome. So, good afternoon everyone. Thank you for being here with us today. I'm Sophie Lambin, the founder and CEO of Kite Insights and the curator of DEBATABLE. I'm delighted to be joined today by Maeve Campbell. Maeve is a climate presenter and producer at Channel 4 News. She's also a columnist for Forbes and a media advisor for the Cambridge University Sustainability Institute. And I'm delighted that Maeve will be moderating this session with me today. Thank you, Maeve. You can clap for her. Thank you very much. So before we begin, I'd like to thank the Bellwethers group for their trust and for leaping into this fresh format, albeit ancient, that a debate is. And delighted to do this on this slightly rainy yet beautiful day at the Nature and Climate House. So we are very excited to experience with you this first debate during the first London edition of South by Southwest, where climate action meets cultural movement. And the debate you'll be witnessing today is in fact a cultural debate, which has high stake for all of us, whether you're citizen, professionals, change makers, or just caring members of society. So let's start by agreeing exactly what it is that we're going to be debating today. And then I'll tell you a bit more about how we will debate. So Maeve, why don't you come and set the scene for us?
Hello. Who's ready for a debate? Okay, so I'm just going to set the scene, as Sophie said. So the motion today, as we know it, is the climate emergency has backfired. In the next hour, we will be exploring with our brilliant speakers the extent to which the climate movement may have resulted in a form of cultural paralysis as a result of overwhelming polarization and a sense of tribalism we probably all know very well in this movement. So I think it's very useful if we just define kind of how we got to these terms. So what was the starting point for this motion? We began by thinking about the phrase climate emergency, not just as a scientific reality, but also as a cultural message, as a slogan, as a political kind of rallying cry, and of course, as a mindset. By that I mean the mindset of emergency. The crisis mindset that the original climate movements pioneered, based firmly on the science. In other words, what kind of mood has climate emergency messaging created in our cultures, and has it produced the desired effect of urgency? Has sounding the alarm with phrases like Greta Thunberg's "our house is on fire" done more harm than good? Or is being loud and alarmist the only way that we can combat the sense of climate fatigue? So what we need to think about today is how have people responded both behaviourally, emotionally, professionally, creatively, since the climate emergency was actually declared here in London in the House of Commons. The climate crisis is fact, it's science, but is the emergency narrative working?
Great, thank you for that excellent food for thought, Maeve. Now, before we get into the rule of the game, I'd like to draw your attention to the fact that the format of this debate is highly intentional. You'll have a for side, and you'll get an against side. You'll get an esteemed panel of jury in front of me, Greg Temmerman, Pooja Tilvawala, and Mark Maslin. You'll hear more about them in a minute. And of course, we have you, the audience, who is absolutely instrumental in the success of this debate. So without further ado, I'd like to invite our debaters to the stage. Come up, everyone. I'll start with the for side. Please welcome them. On the for side, we have Louis V. Robin Millington, Phoebe Tickle, and Matt Golding. Wonderful, welcome. And on the against side, I have Chris Caldwell, Kresse Wesling, Will Attenborough, and Christopher Kenna, who will be arriving hopefully very soon. It was all planned. So, now remember that the motion we are debating is not meant as a statement of truth, it is a provocation. It is really an invitation to disagree agreeably, I was going to say disagreeably, to disagree agreeably so that critical nuances and new decision pathways can emerge. Which is why we should remember that our debaters are not necessarily arguing from a position of personal opinion. They're really lending their brain, their experience to the debate for the sake of the debate and might very well have to set aside their own belief for the sake of the debate, which will take a lot of intellectual agility, eloquence, courage, and I would even say empathy. So please, audience, don't hesitate to clap, to whoop, or whenever the debaters are making a good point, as it's really important that we all lean into the theatrics of the moment. We have asked the same of our debaters, and they will need all the support we can give them. Now, we are all very serious people, but we all also like a little bit of drama as well. Now, very quickly to the house rules, because it's important. Each debaters will have exactly 3 minutes of speaking time. They will be speaking from the lecterns on the for side and on the against side. They will both come on the stage at the same time. Maeve will be watching the clock here, so no hogging of the mic, please. And after you have all spoken, your jury members will come to the stage and will reflect on what they heard. Now, they are not there, despite their name, called to ask to find the winning side, but rather they are there to reflect on what they heard, point to the points that they felt were particularly compelling, and maybe highlight some of the blind spots. Now, debaters, during that time, you'll take good notes of their comments, because you will then have 2 minutes as a group to decide how you might come for your final rebuttal. At that point, the gloves come off, emotions run high. Well, there's a fair amount of healthy competition, as you will see. Each team will then have 1.5 minutes for one or two of them to come for their final rebuttal, at which point the audience, that's you, you'll have the great privilege of judging with a very incredibly sophisticated net zero clapometer to decide which team has been the most compelling. Now, it's very important that you remember that it's not going to be necessarily for the side that represents your opinion, but for the side that you feel has been the most compelling in the argumentation. Maeve.
Very, very important that we do that, because I think we're all trying to get out. We're all trying to get out of our echo chamber. So, kind of put your own personal beliefs aside and just listen to each argument and see what sways you. Before we start, I'm just going to quickly test the temperature in the room of where we're at on the motion so far. So, if you think that yes, the climate emergency has backfired, raise your hand and give me a whoop. Okay, interesting. If you think no, the climate emergency has not backfired, raise your hand and give me a whoop. Okay, you are slightly leaning on that side. Bear in mind, bear in mind. Great. So we're going to have to see if the debaters sway you, but without further ado, I think we're going to begin. Let's just do one more big round of applause. Big, 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 for everyone. Great. Perfect timing. Welcome, Kresse. So we've got the first two debaters up. I'm going to stand down here so you can see them. On the for side, this is, just so everyone knows, this is the for lectern, this is the against lectern. So on the for side, we have Louis VI. Fun fact about Louis taped over his old family footage as a kid to record David Attenborough on VHS. If that doesn't deserve a whoop, I don't know what does. On the against side, we have Chris Caldwell, who hosts a climate podcast where he interviews scientists, CEOs, and royalty. Basically anyone who can explain why we're in trouble and how we can fix it, ideally in under 60 minutes. So, the for team speaks first. The clock is here. I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. You've got 3 minutes. Please take to the stand, Louis. I'll tell you when to start. When you've finished, do you remain up here to watch your opponent?
All right.
Okay, have we got the clock ready? Is it set? Okay, start when you're ready, and it will go.
Humans, aren't we an amazing bunch? We're coherent, sensible, damn right cohesive. We're harmonious, homogeneous. Some may even say the planetary adhesive. Our decisions are unified, rational, logical, empathetic, and quick. And most of all, when it really counts, unfortunately, this is all utter bullshit. For better or worse, we're emotionally driven, irrational bags of hormones that invented the light bulb before we fully understood the fire. Running around pretending we know what we're doing, but only 2 missed snacks away from a meltdown. As much as we like to pretend it's otherwise, we humans make decisions based on feeling rather than fact. And that's what makes us both brilliant in our art, our design, our music, our love, but also what makes us flop at anything else. My argument is simple. Has the climate emergency backfired? Yes, in its language. We need to stop saying it's a climate crisis, because when was the last time screaming in someone's face actually got them to do something for you, let alone come up with a collective creative solution to all-encompassing problem that will affect every single person, living being on the planet. So, what is the world climate? What's the word climate in relation to you and me? It's too ambiguous, man. We need language that makes you feel like, rah, that's me they're talking about. We can do this. Simply put, the language needs to feel like a vibe. To make people feel excited to be involved, maybe even more so, lame if not. For real change, coin terms need to be recoined, like what I did there. What are the globally shared cultures? Music, sport, art, clothing, food. I argue it's time to create a new global culture so universally loved and compelling that it becomes an exciting thing rather than a scary thing for us to become the stewards of this biodiverse, beautiful planet that we're meant to be. We're in a climate crisis, but even more so, we're in a crisis of understanding, that we're in a crisis of compelling people to feel, to react, to really empathetically relate to our home planet. People would rather light a new fire than battle putting one out. We need a new rallying cry that not based on emergency and help me panic, stress, because life has enough of that. Let's not say, you don't say come to the party, otherwise you'll be lonely forever and have a shit time. You say come to the party, fam. Trust me, you're going to love the vibe. The music, the food is going to be off the charts. You might even fall in love. I'm not saying I've got the slogan yet, but this isn't a climate emergency. It's humanity's opportunity to be better. If this lot think the cultural rallying cry of climate emergency is working, I want to remind you one thing. No one's coming to your revolution if you can't dance in it. Thank you.
Thank you, Louis. Kresse, are you ready?
I am indeed.
Okay, so we're just going to reset the clock. Okay, when you're ready, the clock will start.
The climate emergency hasn't failed us. What's failed us is our failure to respond to it properly. Now, we're going to start with a quick retort of when the last time that you responded to someone shouting in your face made you go and take action. Well, if somebody ran in here and shouted, fire, well, we'd all get up, we'd wander out in an orderly fashion, we'd call the fire brigade would bring the hoses, bring the waters, and the fire would be doused. We would have a plan, we'd know what to do. Now, if somebody then came up here and said, hey, outside, the weather's beautiful, you need a little bit of imagination for this, but the chances are the response for a couple of people would be, I could do with kind of stretching my legs and going out for a quick walk. But the majority of us would think, well, no, we're here, we're kind of comfortable, it's kind of nice, we're okay, we're not going to step up and walk out. But that's the problem we face. We don't need climate optimism without action. We certainly don't need paralysis masked as pragmatism. We need a fire alarm, but we also need the fire brigade. We need a plan. Now, the climate emergency is not a branding exercise. It's a statement of scientific reality. The language didn't backfire. The political and economic systems that were supposed to respond to it in all of our best interests have. To suggest that the crisis mindset turns people off and it creates fear and alienation, easy for me to say, is only partially true. The fear should be, if somebody ran up and said fire, the fear is what would motivate us to get out of here. And the alienation comes from political leaders calling a climate emergency, but then reopening coal plants or starting new oil and gas. Like, it's being told that this threat is existential, but meanwhile business as usual just takes over with a green cloak. Now, nowhere is this more clear than the world of business, where, and just to be really clear here, this isn't just an ecological crisis, this is also an economic crisis. There is no profit to be made on a dead planet. But it's also the greatest wealth creation and economic opportunity of our generation. To get to the hopeful way forward that I think we all want, there is enormous opportunity along the way. We end up building a cleaner world. We end up building a world where our children don't need to be breathing bad air. We build a world where we're not borrowing from the future for our own prosperity. We build a world where there's clean energy, ubiquitous for everybody. So no, we don't need to ditch the emergency. We need to act like it's real. And we need to do a much better job of pairing urgency with vision. And it's not just a warning, that's a promise. We need to ring the alarm bell, and we need to show people the way forward. Now, the emergency itself has not backfired. The complacency and our reaction to it has. I urge you to reject this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So we had a bit of kind of climate urgency with action, or climate urgency with vision over here, a bit of focus on business. You said we can't have climate optimism without action. Quite liked that. Poetry. Really liked the beginning there. Invented the light bulb before we understood the fire. I feel like that really resonated with me, that line. Anyone else? Great. Thank you so much. Please sit down. Okay, we've got our second pair of debaters up. So for the for side, we have Phoebe Tickle. Phoebe recently appeared in the... Robin? Oh, I'm so sorry. I skipped a bit further. Sorry. Robin first. So, Robin's next. Robin, over here, in the lovely coral suit. Robin's fun fact is that she was in Berlin the night the Berlin Wall came down. Ooh. Oh. Oh, you're in Moscow. Oh, well. Clearly my script is just being torn up, but that's okay. We'll roll with it. Against it, on the against side, we have Kresse. Kresse Wesling, and her fun fact is that she will gift one of Kresse and Elvis's large wash bags to anyone in the room who can guess why she was once arrested. So I won't let you do that now, but just have your thoughts, and then afterwards you can go up and ask her. So 3 minutes on the clock. We're going to start with 4 again. You can see the minutes here. If it gets down to 5 seconds, I will put my hand up and show you. So when you're ready, Robin, the clock will start.
Right. As Christopher said, the climate emergency is real, but the use of this language, who is the audience that we're intending this for? How are we trying to use this term to motivate which audience? Are we talking to the government? Are we talking to consumers? Are we talking to the energy system? Who are we trying to get to listen to this, and who is listening? I've been listening to a lot of the terminology that's being used. In terms of climate emergency, we also have a climate crisis, a climate disaster, a climate breakdown, a climate disruption, a climate hazard. We have climate catastrophe. We have a climatic crash. We have, this is my favorite, a climate apocalypse. And then we are at the point of no return, environmental destruction, environmental peril, environmental calamity, ecosystem collapse, ecological cataclysm, biological holocaust. By the time you get through all of that, and I've heard all of these in the last 3-4 months, by the time you get through all of that, who's listening to any of that? What does any of that actually mean? And then I was sitting in Dubai at the climate conference with a group of very preeminent CEOs and board members and people that are actually engaged and do care. But we had the UN Secretary General, who's never used the same term twice, and we were taking bets. What is he going to say this time? And he said variously, there's the godfathers of climate chaos, the race we are losing, but a race we can win. It's the battle of our lives. It's code red for the planet. And oh yes, my favorite, it's the highway to climate hell. And I think I spent the rest of that week listening to the AC/DC highway to hell in my head. I'm not sure that's what he was intending for the message to land. So I'm just making the point that this isn't a call to action for anybody. Who is it a call for action for? Is it the oil companies? Is it the governments? Who are we talking to with this? What I suggest is that instead of using the histrionic terminology, we actually try and say something that means something to people. So, yes, there's a climate emergency. X number of people have died, but make your voice heard with a tagline. Go to your local town hall, sign a petition, join the march, do this, but give people something that they can actually do. Tell your lawmakers what they should do. Don't just tell them it's an emergency. Tell them what we want. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Robin. Oh, sorry, Robin, if you could just stay. You have to stay. We have to be seen to be witnessing each other to agree disagreeably. Agree disagreeably? Or disagree agreeably? Disagree agreeably. So, Kresse, you ready?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, whenever you're ready.
No, it has not failed. And the reason it hasn't failed is that if it had failed, I wouldn't be here. None of what I have done over the past 20 years would have happened. But I am here, and that is indisputable. Correct? Everyone can agree? I'm here? Right. I was the audience. I started reading the IPCC reports in the 1990s. It's why I became an environmental entrepreneur. I responded to what I perceived to be a crisis then through action, not despair, not looking away, not with a woe is me, but with all my time and all my energy. And every time the crisis ramped up, so did we. Here's the latest example. In 2015, we knew we were mitigating carbon, but not directly sequestering it. A little bit like we were asking our friend to go on a diet when we wanted to lose weight ourselves. So we started to imagine what our business could look like if we put climate and biodiversity center stage. Planning took some time, but it sure as heck didn't take a decade, okay? In 2021, we moved everything to a farm. Why? To operate regeneratively, to redesign our business, ensuring that it gives exponentially more than it takes in terms of carbon, community, water, and energy. What does it look like? It looks like a wetland system that cleans more water than we use. It looks like a straw bale workshop that generates its own renewable energy. We've quadrupled in size while reducing our power consumption by 94.7%. It looks like a chemistry-free farm, which puts soil first, fosters biodiversity, and sequesters carbon. We've doubled our soil carbon since the time we've been actively farming, which is 2022. I'm not an anomaly. I am not special. I'm not radical. And just because I'm not in the news every day doesn't mean it isn't happening and that this kind of innovation isn't rife. Negativity bias just means that this kind of story, my kind of story, is undercovered. The crisis is working, but we aren't covering the people who are solving the problem. The future we want is already here, but not everybody knows about it, and not everybody knows how to step into it. The crisis for a lot of people has just taken some time to kick in, and it needs to be covered. Thank you.
Thank you. So, Kresse, you're really focusing there on the underreported nature of the climate crisis. You know, not everyone knows how bad it is, maybe you argue. And also a focus there. Nobody knows how good it is. Okay. Both sides of the argument. Obviously, you focused also on community, on practical solutions, regenerative farming. So that's an interesting kind of balance there. Robin, you're not a fan of histrionics, climate apocalypse or highway to climate hell. I feel like that's going to stay in my head after that. I already have the song in my head, but I'm going to have to get it out for this debate. Very good. Thank you. Please take a seat. Okay, halfway through, 2 more to go. So, for the next round, for the third round of the debate, on the for side we have Phoebe Tickle. Phoebe recently appeared in the Danish national newspaper as somebody who comes from the future. She'll tell you more about that later. On the against side, we have Will Attenborough, who once voiced a lost kitten in an RSPCA advert when he was 6 years old, and he still remembers the lines. So, interesting one. We're gonna.
You were teeing me up to do them just then.
Oh, We'll do it later. We'll keep some room for the end. Okay, so we've got 3 minutes for each of you. Phoebe, we're going to start with you. Whenever you're ready, the clock will start. Let's just make sure it's set. The clock, can't see it yet. Yeah, whenever you're ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, when we declared a climate emergency in 2019, we, and I'm a climate activist, thought we were finally sounding the alarm bells that would wake the world up. Instead, we may have accidentally hit the snooze button on meaningful climate action. The world is going to end next Tuesday. Or so they say. The climate movement has mastered alarmism and science, but failed communication 101. We've spent decades perfecting our facts while forgetting how humans actually think, feel, and change their minds. The result, a communication strategy so misguided that it's been actively harming the cause it claims to champion. Despite massive efforts of activists and policymakers, we're still headed for 3 degrees of warming. 80% of people globally want people to take action on climate change, yet we've seen the rise of nationalism and climate denial. Why this disconnect? Because the climate emergency as a narrative has spectacularly backfired. Here's the fundamental error. People are feeling creatures moved by things they love and understand. Yet we've built our entire strategy on alarmist narratives and facts. The trillion-dollar advertising industry knows better. They understand that humans make 95% of decisions based on emotion and justify it with logic afterwards. Social psychologist Jonathan Haidt describes this as the elephant and the rider. Our rational mind is this tiny rider that thinks he's in control, whereas a massive emotional elephant actually steers most of our decisions. Advertisers sell the sizzle and not the steak. Yet climate activists remain obsessed with graphs and statistics, bombarding people with carbon parts per million, while ignoring the guilt, the fear, and the despair that these kinds of facts can trigger. When overwhelmed, people don't mobilize, they actually shut down, and they turn away. They don't take action. They're afraid. So while we're here as climate activists debating the 2.5 versus the 3 degrees, the far right simply asks, are you fed up? They create space for deeper emotions, and they speak to people's values, things like belonging, pride, community, and then they exploit that connection for self-serving aims. We've been outsmarted by populists while hiding in our echo chamber. Beyond holding space for emotions, we also need to do something else really important. Every successful social movement was powered by a dream. Civil rights had the dream of equality. Suffragettes dreamed of women's liberation. What has the climate movement offered? Reusable cups, hemp shirts, taking a bag to Sainsbury's? Come on. The writer Don DeLillo once said, longing on a large scale is what makes history. We need to paint pictures of the future so irresistible that people can't help but fall in love with them. The climate movement needs to learn that longing, not lecturing, drives change. It's backfired as a movement because it violates everything we know about human psychology and effective communication. And until we learn to lead with love instead of fear, paint visions instead of warnings, and inspire rather than intimidate, we'll continue to lose the battle. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Phoebe. Just if you can stay put. And Will, we're going to come to you next. Whenever you're ready, just going to reset the clock. Yeah, when you're ready.
My argument is quite simple. In a way, I actually really agree with a lot of what the other side have been saying. Louis and Phoebe are talking about harping on the same language of alarmism, reiterating statistics and facts that might switch people off. We're not arguing that we don't need to evolve our messaging. Of course we do. The world is changing. The media environment is changing. However, that doesn't mean that the climate emergency message backfired. In fact, the reason we're able to evolve our messaging now is precisely because it was so effective and so successful in the moment in which it was coined. So if we take ourselves back to 2018, 2019, millions of people, millions of us poured out into the streets. The emotions that the other side are talking about that are so important to galvanize, we all felt that our fear, our anger, our frustration was being heard. And this measurably led to solutions. In the US, the left coalesced around climate as the priority issue. This led to the Inflation Reduction Act, the biggest investment in climate tech in history, being prioritized by the Biden administration. I'll give a very simple example from my own work. My trade union declared a climate emergency. This gave me the legitimacy, the endorsement that I needed to put forward a climate solution, which was to divest our pension scheme from fossil fuels and put it into sustainable developments. Now, we would be making a mistake if we just stayed yelling at people and failed to deliver solutions. What's wonderful, though, is that because we named the urgency so clearly and articulately, we now have a movement of creative minds, of artists who are seeding a brighter, more positive vision of the future. And I'll split this into two broad camps. One is sort of showing, not doing. So in my own work, I run an organization called Green Rider. We work with organizations all across the TV and film industry, big famous actors, jobbing actors, to develop innovative, exciting solutions to decarbonize our industry that make people feel positive, that make people feel like they can participate in something better. Massive Attack created the cleanest gig of all time. Louis will know all about that as a musician. Would we have that kind of solution had we not named the emergency for what it was? And the other piece of this is that we have storytellers seeding new visions of the future, precisely what Kresse was talking about earlier. Who saw Ted Lasso? Do you remember in Ted Lasso where they cover up the fossil fuel branding on their T-shirts? What a beautiful demonstration of solidarity, of collective protest. Who saw Minority Report, where he's sort of moving around the images and the notes? That inspired the creation of the touchscreen. We're seeing that kind of futurism happen in narratives like Black Panther. Wakanda was a decolonized, sustainable world, and those are the kind of visions that are being seeded at this moment. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks. So, Will, naming the emergency message is the power. When we feel our anger is heard, we are more motivated. Phoebe, we've hit the snooze button for too long. We've failed Communication 101. The climate action strategy isn't working. And actually, it's just the emotional elephant in all of us leading all of our decisions. Very kind of different, but also some common ground in those arguments. Great, so we've got our final two debaters now to take the stand. On the for side, we have Matt Golding. Matt once took a life-sized Avengers robot to a kid's birthday party, and he lit the candles with a flamethrower. He had to get Disney's health and safety team to sign off on this idea. Secondly, on the against side, we have Kenna. Chris's claim to fame is he was the first black person born on the Isle of Man. So,
I have a certificate that tells me.
So we're going to start with the for side as always. That means you first, Matt. Whenever you're ready, we're going to just reset the clock and go.
So my name's Matt Golding, and I have got a background in viral campaigns. That's a really crazy thing, but one of the things I've learned is we're not going to get this story out there if we have a terrible story. I'm going to talk about three things: being super empathetic, being courageous, and being super practical. Being empathetic, climate is not the only thing that people are feeling the effects of right now. It's the symptom of a big issue with the way that we've run our society that people are exposed to many outcomes of. And if we keep talking only about climate and not recognizing that not many people wake up on a Monday morning hoping that there's enough climate action by Friday, more of them want to work out how to pay their energy bill, pay their rent, or pay their food bill by Friday, we're not going to look like we're listening to people. And we can see the effects of that with people voting for things that prioritize other things over climate. So how do we get around that? The great news is there are amazing stories out there, and some of the opposing team have talked about this, but we need to look at where the really exciting ones that people can really see themselves taking part in are. And a lot of those aren't coming from the places that we would expect. They're coming from communities who... They're coming from communities who are not bounded by the constraints of politics and corporations. They're just building a future they want to live in. So they're creating these really hopeful visions. Communities like Lawrence Weston in Bristol, who've built a community centre where they're training people in green jobs. They've built the biggest wind turbine in the country that's collectively owned by their community, bringing 100 grand a year into their community. Or Ford Hall Farm in Shropshire, where 8,000 people have come together to buy an organically grown farm so they could protect it and take it out of big agriculture sites because they were going to sell it to Muller Dairies and turn it into a yoghurt chocolate factory. Like, these things are practically achievable, and they're being done by ordinary people. And it's really important that we show people visions of things that they can see themselves in, creating futures they actually want to live in, that give them a joyous future that also tackles climate whilst allowing them affordable food, affordable energy, and affordable warm housing. And the great news is these things are out there, but what we should be focusing our attention on is not banging the drum of emergency. Yes, it has done a great job of making people aware, but we need to learn how to get these stories out there. I've been trying to work out for the last 3 years, but we're finally getting somewhere. Some of these stories are quite hard to get out there, and how we could get them out there better. And there are patterns, but this is what we need to be learning how to do. We need to be learning, why do some of these stories connect with people better than others? There are reasons we're learning. What is it that we need to include in those stories so that people can see themselves in ways that they can practically take part? We need to be telling a story of courage, not a story of fear. That we can see the effects of the stories of fear happening in the way people are voting. We can see what Reform are doing. People are scared already. Telling them to have more fear is not really helping. Giving them really tangible, practical examples of things that people can do to create a future they want to live in is what people need. And we then need to help them have the courage to choose those options. We need to help each other see the ways forward that are being built by people like us, and then give us the courage to take part. If we keep talking about climate, we will look like we're cloth-eared to all the other things people are feeling the effects of. And if we keep talking about emergency, we're not going to give them the routes forward. But those routes are out there, and we need to get those stories out there more.
Thank you, Matt. Thank you very much, Matt. Okay, are you ready, Chris? We're just going to reset the clock. You just reset the clock? Yeah. Okay, whenever you're ready.
Cool. All right, so I'm not the most articulate person, and I'm definitely not an academic, or didn't really finish high school, to be honest. So I'm just going to talk you through how passionately why I think, that why we're against the motion, why I am. I remember I've been on Earth 43 years. I've got 2 kids. I've got a 20-year-old and a 25-year-old, because I started when I was a kid. And number one, I can't be for this motion, because I need the world to survive for my kids. I need it to survive for my grandkids, and for many generations after that. So I couldn't, I couldn't be for. Secondly, I remember back when I used to watch TV as a kid, and I was brought up in a children's home, and there was one time where they got us all together and we watched this show, and it was the Whalers. And there was, I've forgotten what they're called now, but they had a big ship, and on the side of it, they had like a tin can opener, and it sort of cut the side of the ship, and they showed it live on TV. Does anyone remember? And it was to stop the whalers' boats, and it did stop the boat, and I think they did it to 2. And that, I remember as a kid in a children's home, I was like, that is taking action. That's when you believe in something so much that you'll go out and put yourself not only in harm's way, but also in the way of the law. Then between then and now, we've had very articulate people in climate change like Greta, etc. But only recently have I really seen again that people are going out, whether it's Extinction Rebellion or many others, are going out and sticking themselves again in harm's way to make a point, to let the nation or nations know what's going on. So that makes me think that something has galvanized everybody again. Something has said that we need to save this world for our kids' kids, and for many more. And the only way to do that is to take action. And so, the motion says that people, for me, I read the motion as it says people haven't been galvanized, but I'm not seeing that on the news. I'm not coming to meetings like this and hearing from people that have actually superglued themselves or whatever. So, yeah, for me, I would say I have to be against the motion, because I need us to win this, because there is no second chance. It's done once it's done. And secondly, because I've never seen so many people in my 43 years on Earth so galvanized to make change. I've never seen so many, news reports, and just come into London and seen a big boat on a bridge that's there for this particular reason. So yeah, that is my argument.
Thank you very much. So Matt, from you, what I took was courage is really important, you know, and also tangibility, is that a word, tangibility? You know, what we're thinking about kind of from Monday to Friday, not just climate and carbon and things that aren't kind of particularly accessible. And, you know, storytelling, why some stories are better than others and how we need to improve in that area. Kresse, you know, speaking from the heart, you really did. That was very powerful. Kids' future, you know, you clearly approve of people who are sticking themselves in harm's way and that galvanizing feeling. So very good. Please take your seat. And now you can relax because this part's over. Let's give them one more round of applause. Okay, Sophie, I feel like it's going to be a tough call. What do you think?
It is. It's been fantastic. Good job for the jury.
Yeah, very good job for the jury. Okay, so I'm now going to invite our fabulous jury, Pooja, Mark, and Greg. It's like,
Remember me?
Mark's the one I know best, ironically. So I'm going to invite them up onto the stage. They're going to have 2.5 minutes of speaking time each. And they're just going to give their thoughts and reflections on what they heard. So shall I invite Mark? I'll invite you up first.
Thank you very much. Right, thank you very much. I'll wait for the... Oh, I've got a few minutes. Right. The first thing is I'm from UCL, so I'm one of those boring academics. And what's interesting is that we embrace this whole disagreeing well is important because there are so many different opinions. But I don't actually see any disagreement here. Unfortunately, everybody seems to agree with everybody. This is the echo chamber. And I'm going to show you. So I'm going to sum up in one sentence everybody, okay? So I'm going to talk, firstly, Lewis. Okay. Sorry? Louis. I apologize. Louis. Dance into the future. And I love this. Creative should lead the way. Question mark. Kresse. We should have a plan. An emergency plan. Okay, great. Then we have Robin. Join the march. Don't use hysterical terms. We then have Kresse. I'm here because of the climate emergency, one of many. And then we have Phoebe. Failure, communication 101, as we are emotional, irrational messes. That's so lovely. Yeah, okay, I am. I don't know about you. Will, the team was and is very successful. Okay, the term is creating a positive future already. Matt almost echoes that. We need to be empathetic, we have to have courage, and we have to have a better future. And then Kresse, I need the world to survive for my kids and my grandchildren. Did you notice they're all the same? There is really no disagreement. There isn't that diversity of opinions that we have outside. So, I'm going to then end up, as I've got 43 seconds left, by saying, really, no one talked about climate justice. Okay? This is one of the major things about why climate change is so important. It's because there are so many people living in abject poverty in this country, in every other country, and of course, in the world. Climate solutions. Few were mentioned. They were then basically saying, well, we can use this terminology. But nobody got to the scale of the issue. 80% of all energy used in the world at this moment in time is from fossil fuels. That has to be zero in 30 years' time. Think of the consequences. And I'm not even going to go into the impacts, because you all know the impacts, you're all steeped in it. And the last thing I would say is, we are in a scientific and technologically dominated world which we don't seem to understand or use in the right way. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Yeah, we got a fair amount of the challenge. Do you remember? This is great. Remember to express appreciation as well as challenge.
Yeah. It's fine. We've had bad cop.
Yeah.
They're both wrong.
Interesting. Greg, let's have you next. You ready? Thank you.
Pretty hard to follow that. Okay, appreciation first. I think everybody agrees that communication is a big issue and the way we are talking about all of that. I think what I heard also where everybody agrees, I think I actually agree with Mark that everybody agrees, is that we don't talk enough about where we want to go and the vision. So, and it's interesting because if I was to ask anybody what solutions do we need, I don't think everybody would agree. So we agree with the problem, I think. We agree we need to fix it. I don't think anybody knows how to fix it. I don't. Mark perhaps knows, but we don't know all the solutions. And I think that's where things have failed. The narrative has failed because there is no winning or losing. Somebody talked about winning or losing. There is no winning or losing. The only thing we can do is just stop climate from changing. People will still be suffering for a long time because climate has changed already. And that's the drama of this whole narrative. I think, going to a point of scale also, I think none of you have actually mentioned that the scale of what we need to do is unprecedented, and the time scale is 80% of our energy is fossil fuels. That's 16 billion tons of coal, oil, and gas that we burn every year. It has to go to zero in 25 years. Nobody knows what it actually means. What I'm also surprised of, but kind of heard a bit oil mentioned, is when we talk about narrative and communications, we also have to wonder who is controlling the narrative and why. And the reason I mentioned that is this energy transition we keep talking about is one world needs to die, one world needs to be developed, right? But the people who are actually controlling the dying world don't want it to change. I mean, most oil companies want to pump oil one way or another. Coal companies want to burn coal. So I think we have to also realize that this is not about only motivating people. It's also about recognizing the forces which are going our way. And I think this debate is actually interesting because it shows that the headwinds are not all natural. They are kind of pushed by some people with a lot of money, and we are all here agreeing on individual actions. Last point is individual actions are great, but this is not what we need. We need the system to fully change, and I think we need to face that.
Thank you, Greg.
All right. Hi, everyone. My name is Pooja. So I feel they have covered a few of points that I was going to share. But so I'll just get right to it. Some thoughts that I had while listening. Who actually reads positive news? Often people mostly just read bad news and don't spend as much time reading the good news. Emergency messaging leads to prioritization. So putting aside personal life and other ambitions even to focus on this. COVID had this type of messaging and action was taken. There were plans. Even when initially there wasn't an end in sight, why hasn't the climate emergency landed in the same way? Is there a disconnect between the message? And is it because of the time horizon? Like initially with COVID, there wasn't really an end in sight. With climate change, there's not really an end in sight. So if you keep calling something an emergency, how long is it an emergency for? 1 day, 1 week, 1 month, 1 year? And do you have the endurance to last in an emergency that is realistically 5 years or whatever, however long? Is there a disconnect between the message and who's sharing the message? So the elephant in the room, I guess, is that a lot of this messaging is the messengers are like white or white-run organizations. Examples mentioned were like Greta or Extinction Rebellion, and there are people from the island nations and indigenous nations and other populations that are raising their voices but not getting the airtime. And this goes back to the point of who's controlling the media, who owns the media, who controls who gets media opportunities, which languages are the media available in. Then there's some recent studies of you only need to convince 10% of the population to take action. And then another one that said 85% of people do want things done. The last things quickly. You can't keep crying wolf to people who aren't feeling the impacts of an emergency, so then they tune it out. And you don't necessarily need to convince people of an emergency who are living it day to day. So the question, is it time to evolve our messaging or recommit to it by amplifying voices of those most impacted?
Thank you, Pooja. Right, some really, really interesting reflections there. I feel like you've all got really big brains as well. It's just that was really really clever stuff. So we've done that. Now what we're going to do is, thank you to the jury members, we're going to have the debaters huddle in your teams for 2 minutes just to, think about and prepare your final argument, which you're going to make afterwards. Either one of you who's nominated is going to come up, or you're going to come up in pairs. That's up to you. And while we do that for those 2 minutes, you, the audience, are going to just talk amongst yourselves, see where you're at on the dial. Okay? And discuss amongst yourselves. Okay, thank you everyone. I know it's really tempting to keep chatting, such a good debate, but we have to finish because we haven't got that long left in the room. So if we could please, thank you very much. So now you're going to hear the final argument. It's the 11th hour. Teams, are you ready? You feeling ready? Yeah? Does that give me a yeah? Okay, great. Okay, this time we're going to start with against. So can a member or members of your team please go up to the podium. You have 1 minute and a half, which will start when you get up there.
The other side can also
Yeah, other side can get ready as well. If you guys can just get ready, go up in time. Yeah. Okay, just got one of you here, two on this side. Okay, when you're ready. Yeah, just reset the clock. Yeah, okay, when you're ready.
Are we going first?
Yeah, against first.
So we don't think that it has backfired because it's relatively slow. So this isn't a 2018 thing. This is a 30-year catastrophe that's slowly unfolding. I want to remind you about a volcano that erupted in 1669 in Etna that took 5 weeks to reach the nearest town. Nobody died because it was a 5-week-long catastrophe. We have the opportunity of this long catastrophe that we're waking up to slowly, different people at different times. But it hasn't backfired because action is now happening. And it's not just happening in one part of the world. It's happening in China, it's happening in India, it's happening in Brazil. The reason we're talking about climate justice now is because we were talking about a climate emergency in 2018.
And just to add that, with respect to the jury, I think unfortunately the jury misunderstood what the debate is about. The debate is not about climate justice or whether it is an emergency. The debate is about messaging and narrative. The debate is about whether the mindset has backfired. There is a reason why there's a large amount of agreement on both sides. It's because we agree that we need to evolve our storytelling, we need to speak in different ways. However, I'm afraid, Matt, I think you gave away the game at one point because you said, the phrasing's done a great job of making people aware. That's precisely what everyone on our Against panel has said. It has done a great job of making people aware. It has done a great job of driving many people to action. The question now is, what do we do? 80 to 89% of people around the world want their governments to be doing more on this issue. The climate emergency narrative has been successful. What they needed to do was to prove that it backfired, and they have not done that.
Thank you very much. Okay, on the full side, 1.5 minutes when you're ready.
Wait, is it this thing? Don't you lot need to stay up while I demolish
Oh,
you?
they do, yes, oh, sorry, yes, please, yes.
Can you restart the clock, please?
Yeah. It's fine, it's 1.5, we'll wait till it gets to 1.5. Healthy competition, it's all fine, start now, go for it.
It's not 1.5 yet, though.
No, I'll give you a few seconds. Go on.
Right, the problem is, to the jury and you guys as well, there is a difference. You lot are based in fear. Terrible things, the worst things on the planet have been done with fear as a motivator, I'll just say. Also, the headwinds are the headwinds. We can't change that, and we need a better story that speaks to people's normal lives, because normal people are the majority of this planet. And Kresse, if you were the audience, no offense, it did fail, because people from the global majority make up, you guessed it, the global majority, and they're on the front lines. Where's the climate justice in that? I'm from an island nation myself, on the front line, and I can promise you the messaging has not reached them because they live it. And if you want some facts, for those who need to know it, that if you think it's reached all these people with your messaging, in the environmental sector, only 4% of people identify as people of colour, aka the global majority. There you go. Will, I hate to come at you too, but the millions of people compelled to march in 2019, 2020, 89% of people from a recent study think the climate crisis is an important thing. Sure, the messaging might have had that, but 100% of them think they're the minority.
Thank you.
I've not finished. I'd argue that didn't do as much as the Paris Agreement, which is 10 years old, almost to the day. And yeah, if people don't feel it, they don't feel it, and they won't do it. Let's move in love, not fear.
Thank you. Great. Thank you so much, guys. You can take your seats again.
Well, that was wonderful. I told you the gloves would come off at this point, and they certainly did. But I'm sure you will all hug it out at the end. Now is the moment of truth. If you can put back the motion so that our audience know what they're actually voting for, in case they've been confused by jury members. So on the for side, this has believed that the climate emergency has backfired. On the against side here. Now, if you think that the for side put up the best debate, clap now. There is a proximity issue. I don't know what's going to happen. The back is definitely on that side. Now, if you think the against side has put up the best debate, clap now.
It's literally split halfway down the room. So I think we might need to do a rematch.
I think there's I think we need to do a rematch. Yes.
Yeah.
All right.
So if you believe this time, really go for it, because the stakes are high. Okay.
Maeve, you do it.
Right. So if you are for the motion, please clap now. Okay, we hear you. If you're against the motion, please clap now. What do you
have
think?
a winner? I think we have a narrow winner.
I think the against has it.
I think the against has
The
it.
against has it!
Well, it was designed to be a close call, but the key thing is really to thank our debaters for putting up such an amazing debate. It takes some courage to stand in front of you today and debate in the way they have done. So please, a big round of applause for our debaters. What I love about those debates is how it reveals some really interesting nuances, and I don't know about you, but I feel I learned so much on each side of the argument. So thank you so much for that. Thank you, May, for your masterful moderation. I hope we do that again soon. And thank you for our jury members for their challenges and their appreciation from the debaters. And lastly, thank you to the Bellwether Group for allowing us to run the debates today. And another one on Thursday. Thank you.
Thank you.